Welcome to Backstage Pass with Gail Davis, your invitation into the world of keynote speaking and event planning expertise. Join us as we pull back the curtain and dive into exclusive interviews with speaking industry experts. From seasoned speakers to master event planners, we're here to provide you with the ultimate backstage experience. Get ready to unlock valuable insights, tips, and strategies that will elevate your events and leave your audience inspired. Hello, my name is Gail Davis, and I'm your host for Backstage Pass. We have a special episode today with an extraordinary guest who believes in breaking barriers and certainly embodies what she preaches. As the first Latina to win 3 daytime Emmys back-to-back, Gaby Natale has consistently demonstrated her ability to innovate and lead in diverse spaces. And not only as a speaker, but also an MC, she encourages people from all walks of life to break barriers and awaken the pioneer spirit that each of us has to drive innovation, build resilience, and foster a sense of belonging. Gaby, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's always great to be with you, Gail.
I know. I love it. Gaby lives locally, so I get to see her on a fairly regular basis, and I love that. I want to dive right in, Gaby, because your journey is nothing short of inspiring. From being a journalist to becoming a best-selling author, breaking into the speaking market here in the United States, you're an entrepreneur, you consistently break barriers. Can you share for our audience, members that are listening and those who are watching on YouTube, a little bit more about your background and set the stage, if you will, for our listeners?
Absolutely. So, hello, everyone. My name is Gaby Natale. I am originally from Argentina. I moved to the United States after I graduated with a master's degree in journalism. And I graduated in Buenos Aires in the year of our biggest economic crisis, where we had 5 presidents in 10 days. So talk about disruption. I arrived here to the United States alone. I had no friends or family. I did long distance with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, so he's a keeper. And what I learned when I started working here is that I started to work as a reporter and anchor, but what I hated is that I found that the news industry at the time wanted for women who worked on camera to be this or that. But I crave to have my own voice because I am a multi-dimensional woman. So when my green card was approved, I said, it's time for me now to think about what I truly want. I embraced what I call my pioneer spirit, and I said, I'm going to use whatever makes me unique to my advantage. And I'm going to identify the stories, the opportunities, and the white spaces that I am uniquely qualified to identify to improve my career, to have more leverage. Instead of trying to be something that I'm not, I'm going to use whatever I have to play to my advantage. And to make a long story short, we started creating content in a carpet warehouse in West Texas, where I lived at the time, and believing in our own unique vision meant that we would identify stories that other people would not see. And to make a long story short, we started regionally, then nationally, then we became a 3-time daytime Emmy Award-winning company, and many doors opened after that. I am the first Latina published by the leadership division of HarperCollins, and then a whole new world of being a speaker and MC opened for me because I recalibrated my own belief system. And I thought that whatever makes me unique is my advantage. And it was strategic. How am I going to play and use that in my favor?
That's what I was just sitting here. I was listening to you and I'm like, is there a certain moment where you redefined what was possible for you?
Yes, I always say, Gail, that discomfort is our wake-up call to pioneer. Discomfort.
Oh, say that again. Say that again. That's good.
Discomfort is our wake-up call to pioneer. What do I mean by that? There are moments in our lives, it can be a professional relationship, a personal relationship, it can be a project, it can be something that is it's bringing us some discomfort. And the question that we have to ask is, how can I pioneer? How can I do things differently? And how can I use whatever makes me unique to my advantage? And when I talk about pioneering, let me give you some context. I talk about the emulator mindset, which is to look around and do what everyone else around me is doing, repeating the same things, doing the same type of tasks. And the other thing is the pioneer spirit. And the pioneer spirit, it starts in the same way. You look around, but you this time allow yourself to do something that nobody else around you is doing, to embrace your uniqueness, to break barriers and redefine what is possible. And Gail, we've partnered many times during the years. You know, I started talking about this way before AI was so present in our lives, and the conversations about AI were so present about in our lives. But I truly feel when I think about the emulator mindset and the pioneer spirit, that it has never been more relevant. Why? Because the more we rely on the emulator mindset, the repetitive tasks, the things that we repeat that everyone else is repeating, the more likely we are to be replaced, for our tasks to be automated, and for what we offer to become a commodity. And when you have something that is offered as a commodity, the way to compete is a race to the bottom. You have to give cheaper. You have to do harder. You have to work more hours for less money. And that's not a smart way to compete. So that's why I think the pioneer spirit is more important now than ever, because it's only through tapping to whatever makes you unique that you're going to find the next great opportunities. And that involves self-awareness, getting to know yourself, taking the time to know yourself, whether you're a person or an organization. What makes you unique? And then the pioneer spirit is beautiful because, as I said, discomfort is our wake-up call to pioneer. And we're being disruptive. I just mentioned technology, Gail, but it can be regulations. It can be changes in the way we do business with different companies or different countries. So I don't know when people are seeing this, but today, the topic of the day is trade. Are we going to have tariffs or not? And are they going to be big or small? What are the repercussions? So I said, today, I'm going to speak with Gail. And one of the things we talk about is how we can tie what we talk about with the news of the day or the industry we're talking about. And really, economic sanctions are not something new in history. We've always been disruptive in one way or another by economic sanctions. So I said, this is my challenge today. I'm going to find a story that has resonance with what's happening today, that is relevant for my topic, the pioneering spirit, that I can share with Gail. And the fourth thing is that I have in my house. So that's the challenge.
Oh boy, where's this going to go, Gaby?
Okay. So the story I'm going to share is about economic sanctions, but it takes us to Italy in the 1940s. So Mussolini invaded Ethiopia. And as a result of that, there were economic sanctions. Now, there was a very talented shoe designer, and this is where the uniqueness combines, because I love shoes and I love history. So there was a very talented shoe designer whose name we're going to reveal at the end, that was producing shoes. And he was producing shoes in the way they were produced traditionally, which is with a metal heel. Now, when economic sanctions hit, metal was not available. So the question was, how am I going to stay in business, produce this product, if this part of my shoe is gone? And that's when the pioneering spirit and embracing this man's uniqueness kicked in, because he started thinking about alternative solutions. And as a good Italian, what did he love? Wine. And what has wine in the bottle? Cork. Cork. So the solution this pioneer came up with was to create a different kind of heel. And because he didn't have steel, he created a heel made of cork. To make a long story short, he created what we now call platforms, or the wedge heel. And I'm showing a very crazy, funky wedge heel sneaker that I have in my house, which has a cork heel. So I'm talking about Salvatore Ferragamo, and this is a story of innovation where we can combine what is happening today, the pioneering spirit, our conversation, and things from my home, so that we can get a little bit of ideas and hopes that what we're going through, A, is not new, and two, can be the seed for something that will take our business, our career, or whatever we're planning today to the next level. Because if you saw the Grammys just last night, there were plenty of platforms there.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I love it. And if you're listening, you've got to go watch the YouTube video because Gaby has some killer shoe props. That is amazing. You know, I know that there are a lot of people who just feel stuck and they just don't see themselves being able to achieve success in certain spaces. And you kind of demonstrated it there, but maybe you might want to elaborate a little bit about stepping into your uniqueness. I know you've done that by the way you enter a stage. I don't know anybody else that does that. But what does it mean for professionals that are out there and they're trying to carve their own path? What are your thoughts on that? Because
And I was there too, Gail. I was there feeling stuck, feeling that what I brought to the table made me inadequate in one way or another, but I cannot be another way. I don't know if it's a gift or it's a fault, but I cannot be in another way. So this is what we have. And what I realized while I was doing my work as anchor or reporter is that I have the privilege of interviewing people from all walks of life that were pioneers, super achievers, and that at some point they had this moment where they felt stuck or they had to make a decision. And what I realized in the beginning, I thought that being a pioneer was a path reserved for a chosen few, that these people I interviewed belonged in a different league from the rest of us, the mortals. But then I realized we had a lot in common, and that being a pioneer was something that you could cultivate. And I remember in one of the interviews, the interview with Deepak Chopra, that he had one moment where he had to make this choice. The choice was, I am here, I am a doctor, I am an immigrant from India, but I grew up with all these ideas about Eastern practices, and now I'm doing Western medicine. And I'm trying to convince the doctors in the ER that yoga and meditation are wonderful things. But the more I tried to bring it to them, and this was in the 70s, the more resistance I got. So that was the moment when he had to make a choice. And the choice was, am I going to emulate what everyone else is doing in the field of medicine? Or am I going to pioneer, embrace my uniqueness? I come from India. I know what Ayurveda is. I know what meditation is. I know what yoga is. Maybe other people don't know it, but I know it. And so he decided, that was the moment when he decided to pioneer, embrace his uniqueness, and write his first book. The rest is history. We all know that he's one of the most successful authors of all time. And sometimes what I tell people when they have to do this evaluation, and we need courage sometimes to embrace our uniqueness because we feel sometimes inadequate. But what I tell them is you have to think that if you are scared, this is so much bigger than yourself, because the ideas that you can bring, the projects that you can illuminate, the white spaces in your industry that you can identify are going to, yes, they are going to benefit you. but they are going to benefit so many more people. So what sometimes in appearance, some people think it's vanity work, it's an egotistic work, or it's a look at me, look at me. It's in fact something that you can be doing not just for yourself, but also for the rest.
Along the way, did you ever feel a need to like work on your accent or to try to be more American versus more Latin? Did you ever feel any pressure?
There's always this pressure of, who are you? What is your point of view? Or why are you going to be relevant to X, Y, or Z audiences? But I do feel that the universal message is the one that gets everyone together.
Yes.
Because yes, somebody from Argentina may speak in the same way, somebody from Kentucky may speak in a different way, but at the end of the day, everybody has its own thing that makes them feel different, that makes them feel inadequate, that makes them feel like, oh, I should be doing this or I should be doing that. And what I realized after 20 years of interviewing superachievers and pioneers from all walks of life is that their best work came when they embraced that thing.
I love that. I love that. Well, speaking of embracing that thing, you have a background as a journalist, and then you have this amazing story. So that has positioned you to both be a keynote speaker and to be an MC. So I'd like you to talk about how you combine those two roles, speaker and MC, sometimes at the same event, right?
Yes, sometimes they are completely separate. So I've had like 3-day event and they just want an MC. And I've had when they just want the keynote, but I think it's very interesting when we combine both. Why? Because we can talk about being a pioneer and we always talk about customizing and how to make it relevant for their audience or personalized for their audience. And one very interesting way of doing that is we can talk about in the keynote about how to be a pioneer, and we can follow it and transition smoothly with a panel with your internal pioneers that can share your story. So, so there's many ways. As a trained journalist, I can interview before a keynote key stakeholders and incorporate that into the message or into the keynote. Another way is, as I said, to transition the keynote into a panel of your internal pioneers. We can do different workshops. Sometimes with some brands, we have done campaigns where I was their brand ambassador, like for Century 21, I was their Empowering Latinas brand ambassador. So it was speaker, keynote, MC, and brand ambassador. So I like to keep, myself open because each company and each opportunity may look different.
That's so good. So true. I know along the way, I've heard a phrase or a concept that you've coined, and it's called the virtuous circle. Can you break that down for the listeners and explain how it helps people shift their mindset and embrace opportunities that they might not have thought was possible?
Absolutely. So one day after recording one interview, I asked myself, looking back at 20 years interviewing these amazing people, and I asked myself a very simple but profound question. And that was, what do they all have in common? What do these people who come from different industry. One is a singer, another is an athlete, another is an author, another is a business guru. What do they all have in common? Because there was nothing that was something that you could tell, okay, it's the same culture, it's the same age. And what I realized is, yes, there is an invisible thread that unites all of them. And then the second question that I asked myself is, these commonalities that I'm seeing in these pioneers and peak performers, can I create a replicable step-by-step system so that we can all learn from them? Because I realized that the more I spoke with them, the better I became, because I was learning from them. And that's what I call the virtuous circle. And the virtuous circle is a framework that is a circle composed by 7 archetypes. So there's 7 different triangles. Think about a pizza. So there's 7 triangles in this circle, and to each corresponds an archetype. And those archetypes live inside all of us. So the first archetype is, and to each archetype, there's a action. So the first archetype is the dreamer. The dreamer is the one that allows us to visualize. We first have to visualize. The second is the architect. The architect is the one that allows us to plan. But a lot of people tell me, Gaby, I'm a great dreamer, fantastic architect, but I never execute. And that comes the next one. That is the maker. The maker in us is the one that allows us to execute. When you execute, 2 things can happen. You can make a mistake or not make a mistake. You can have a win. If you're smart, you're going to learn. So you're going to become not just a maker, but an apprentice. An apprentice. An apprentice is the one that perfects their craft. And I always joke that when you become really good at what you do, Gail, you know what happens? Sometimes what happens is that still nobody's paying attention. So you need the next one, which is the warrior. The warrior is the one that allows us to persevere through tough times. And when everything you learn with the apprentice and the perseverance you have with the warrior meet an opportunity, because sooner or later we come across opportunities, then we have our win, our achievement, and we become the champion. That's another archetype. And I ask all my champions, champion, what are you using your achievements for? What are you using your achievements for? If you're using your achievements for something bigger than yourself, you're going to inspire and you're going to become the last archetype, which is the leader. And it's called the virtuous circle because with your next project, with your next idea, where do you go? Back to the beginning to being a dreamer, because the only constant in life is change and evolution. So this is a constant. We can think about it as an upward spiral because we're learning each way we go through the virtuous circle, but the only constant is change and evolution. And that's how I was able to synthesize 20 years of meeting these people and recognizing their greatness in our own potential, their greatness, and how we can also use it as a self-assessment tool to understand which of these archetypes are the ones that come natural to me. For example, I know I'm a good warrior, but what I also realized is that when things don't go my way, I'm not such a great dreamer. I disconnect from seeing the world from a place of possibilities. For some other people, it can be they don't execute, they just plan, they fall in love with plans. So it's something that you can use to get to know yourself.
Oh, I love that. I love the aspect of self-reflection, and I love the aspect of always learning and changing from the different archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. One thing that I know helps our sales team and also is a frequently asked question from event planners is, what type of audience are you most often booked for? So off the top of my head, we're coming out of January, so I'm thinking sales kickoffs. We're moving into February, March. I'm thinking incentive trips. And then, of course, there's nonprofits, there's leadership conferences. Do you have a particular one of those women's conferences that you hear and go, oh, that's my sweet spot? Or do you blend across those various types of events?
In terms of industries, I would say I'm industry agnostic because I've worked with JP Morgan Chase, Financial Century 21, that's real estate, consumer goods, P&G, Johnson & Johnson, Walmart, Microsoft, Google, many of these big names, Fortune 100, yes, that are across really different industries. But if you're talking about somebody who is the ones that are also natural to me, women's group love me. It's like a natural, that's a natural fit. But I do feel that in terms of industry, there's no specific industry in itself. What I would like to, since this is for people and there's people listening who are planning events, I would say not just think about the industry or the subject, also think about the energy, because what I found is that many times people also want somebody who can combine actionable frameworks and tips and substance with high energy delivery. And I combine both. It's not like because I have high energy, you're not gonna get your nuggets. Everything is there combined and it's smoothly combined. But what I've noticed is that really smart and strategic meeting planners, they put me like right after they had, let's say, a virtual session with a dark light, and they had somebody in Hong Kong and somebody here, and they are talking, and the energy is low. So I go right after that, or I am the closing keynote. It's how they want to feel when they leave. Okay, really high energy. That's how they want for them to leave, to feel when they leave. Or if they want to start the day with a bang, that's another. So I think, like, instead of thinking so much about, the industries or the groups, I would say also let's add a layer on what is the energy that you want to bring to your audience.
I think that is fantastic. I just had an experience where I wish you would have been the closing keynote speaker because it was a multi-day conference, and it had been a long, long day of curriculum and information and just stuff coming in and coming in and coming in. And I think the energy was low, and I think you've got to match where the people are and where you want them to go. I think that's a really, really good nugget. Kind of along those lines, I think it's helpful to know what kind of feedback do you get from people? Because that's one of my favorite things when I'm on site, is to go up with the speaker, because there's always people that come up and want to talk to you. I've been with you, so I know, and don't feel like you're bragging on yourself. But what do you hear? What are they saying after you speak?
There's always a combination, and the combination has always this commonality. There's an element of I'm inspired, so there's always something like, hey, this was such a great inspiration, etc. But also there's an element on what's next for me. So you heard my keynote about pioneers. So I have a framework there that is called the Pioneers Growth Trifecta. And the Pioneers Growth Trifecta has three elements: consistency, excellence, and visibility. And depending on what is the dilemma that you're facing, there's going to be different outcomes. If you need more consistency, more excellence, or more visibility, and there's different scenarios. So people come to me and they tell me, oh, this was very inspiring. I realized that I am this person having this challenge, and now I know what the next steps are to overcome this challenge. Because in my keynotes, because my frameworks are about you, yourself, or your organization. What you leave is the message of, okay, now I realized more about myself, more about my organization, more about my own dilemma or my own obstacle that I have to overcome. And I have these tools to know the next step. So when people leave, their next step, they don't look the same for all of them. They have different next steps. And sometimes there are commonalities, but it's this mix of inspiration. This is what I found out about myself, and this is how I can take the next step to solve it.
I was thinking about your virtuous circle, and everybody's going to identify with a different slice of that pizza.
And
they're going to be like, I'm stuck over here. I need to tap into this. Or it's okay if I'm show up differently along the way. That's the process. I love that. I really love that. I know you also spend a lot of time thinking about leadership. Is there anything that you think is missing in traditional leadership conversations?
I think right now one of the most important things we have to reflect on is that leadership is a long game. So in times of turbulence, in times of confusion, in times of uncertainty, you have to anchor your leadership on your values. And why am I saying this? Because I do believe that, I don't believe it, I know that it takes a long time to build trust It takes years. It takes a long time to build trust, but trust can be broken in just a second, in just a minute. And when your words and your actions don't match, that's the fastest route to erase your own leadership. So that, I think, is the conversation that we have to have right now. Are we playing the long game, or are we making decisions that are going to disengage our workforce and alienate our customers? And this is a very profound conversation, but I don't think leadership is today I wake up and this is what I believe, and tomorrow I wake up and I believe the opposite. Leadership is these are my values, and of course, you can adapt to times, you can adapt to technologies, you can adapt to disruption, but you have to be anchored in values. Otherwise, you're not going to be relevant in your messaging or believable in your message for your workforce, for your consumers, for your strategic partners. And we can see that in Davos, the Edelman Trust Barometer has shown that people's trust is going low. And right now, what people are trusting the most are nonprofits, because they associate nonprofits with value-driven leadership.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really good. Gaby, you do have a lot of content, and you match that with this incredible stage presence, which is high energy. There's a lot of that Latina passion there. You're a great storyteller. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but how do you make sure that you don't just inspire the audience, but that they also walk away ready to take action?
For me, it's all about having frameworks, because I've been there in the audience when somebody has a great story, as you said, a great stage presence, high energy, and they take me from A to B, and the story is spectacular. But then the hour goes away, and I'm sitting there like, what's in it for me? You just told me a fantastic story. You just told me something that is out of this world, that I cannot replicate, because I cannot be a ballerina in the Bolshoi. It's too late for me for that. And I've never been such a great dancer. So it's about providing your audience not just with stories, not just with energy or a presence, whatever you want to call it, but also taking the time, putting your behind in the chair, making sure you read the books and you prepare, so that you can come up with something that is of your own, that it's your own framework, that you're not regurgitating from somebody else. That's a big thing for me, and that you can offer to your audience, so that they leave with whatever tools are going to help them get that next right step. Because it's all about a journey where you are going to have a lot of different challenges, a lot of different scenarios, but sometimes all we can figure out is the next right step. So for me, it's so important, so that you leave and okay, this is what I learned. I had fun, I was inspired, the energy is high, etc. But this is what I learned about myself and my organization. This is my obstacle. This is how I can take the next step.
That's great. Going back to embracing our own uniqueness, or you embracing your uniqueness. Last year, you were very public on social media, and you revealed that you have become a breast cancer survivor. And you joined a select group of Susan G. Komen official ambassadors. I'm curious why you decided to share this journey.
I decided to share this journey because I believe in embracing our own messages. So if I'm telling people, I go out there and I tell people, embrace your uniqueness, break barriers, let's have these conversations, let's show up as who we are. And then I respect when people don't want to share their diagnosis, but I feel like in my case, I have to leave my message. This is who I am, and this is my message. And then the next step was, okay, now that I finished my treatment, and now that I am on the other side, how, like in the virtuous circle, I had my achievement, which was to stay healthy and alive. And the question for the champion was, champion, what are you using your achievements for?
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
And so
Yeah.
what am I using my achievements for? So this is a new achievement unlocked. I stayed alive. I learned things along the way. And that's why when I was proactive and I said that, and this is something that, I know speakers also listen to this podcast. So I encourage them, if there's something that is going through their lives and there's a nonprofit or an organization that can help amplify that message, reach out, because that's what I did. I said, I'm gonna send an email to the president of Susan G. Komen and telling her, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I think I can help you. And she responded, within the hour, connecting me to the right teams. And long story short, I did interviews to raise awareness on breast cancer prevention in English, in Spanish, in Univision, in Telemundo, in MVC. We did a podcast. We're doing more work, and we're going to be doing a campaign called Beauty and Resilience, where we're going to show that you still have to love yourself, not when you're at the end of it, in the process. In the process, you have to love yourself. So that's part of why I chose to embrace that. It's not the only thing that I am, a breast cancer survivor, but it is part of my identity now.
I love that. I love it. This has just been such a good conversation, and I could talk to you all day long. You're so easy to visit with. But before we go, is there one piece of advice that you would give to anyone listening who's really ready to step into their power and redefine what's possible?
Yes. Every time we choose to pioneer, we move the world forward. Every time we choose to pioneer, we move the world forward. So going back, this is not about you. This is so much bigger than you. So take that step.
Well, that is a mic drop moment. I love it. And for all of our event planners that are listening, if you want a speaker who's going to leave your audience inspired, energized, with a framework, and ready to break those barriers, I think Gaby Natale is a foolproof choice. So Gaby, thank you so much for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing what's next, because I know this is only the beginning for Gaby Natale.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you so much. Thank you for
You're
always
welcome.
being so supportive, so generous with your advice and your time. She is an ally for everyone. Thank you so much, Gail.
Thanks, Gaby. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on Backstage Pass with Gail Davis. Tune in for more exclusive interviews and pro tips to elevate your events. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts with us. We'll catch you next time behind the curtain on Backstage Pass.